All right, so welcome everyone, and we can get right into this awesome panel. Thank you for this opportunity to moderate this discussion on these amazing films, The White Butterfly and The Empathizer for the 2024 Viet Film Fest. I'm Ethan Nguyen, an assistant professor in Asia Pacific Studies at Cal State Dominguez Hills, and I specialize in the study of Vietnamese and Vietnamese American history. Given this interest, I can say that it's a great honor to serve as a moderator on this panel. So just to begin, I was wondering if folks can start by introducing themselves and their role in the production of their respective films. So then let's start with The White Butterfly with Catherine.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Nguyen, and I am the writer-director of White Butterfly.
All right, Juyeon.
Hi, I'm Jian Song, and I played May in White Butterfly.
All right, Fred and Brett, you guys together. Yeah.
First? I'm Fred Lay. I'm the director and producer of The Empathizer.
And I'm Brett Hamilton. I am a cinematographer and co-director of The Empathizer.
Awesome. All right. So then some general questions to start off with. And this can go to whoever wants to speak up first, or I could just choose. So the first question I have for you guys is, why did you choose to create the films that you did? What was your inspiration behind the film and the message that you want to convey or emphasize in these films? And we can start with The White Butterfly. Yeah.
Sure. So this story was largely inspired by my mom's experience with my paternal grandmother's passing. My grandma had passed away when I was 5 years old, and I remember my parents just getting up and leaving and to go back to Vietnam for the funeral. And for many years after that, I would hear a lot of stories from my mom and her experience with all of the funeral rites, which, are very traditional. It was also in Hanoi, so Northern Vietnamese funeral rituals are very extensive. And so I really just wanted to embody in this film all of those emotions that she felt, which, there was a lot of confusion and fear. For her, she came to America when she was like in high school, and she grew up Catholic. And so a lot of these traditions were a little bit more foreign to her. And so, I just really wanted to kind of embody those emotions and that in this story. But I'll also say, I think a huge part of the reason why I wanted to make this film is I feel like a lot of the times when Vietnam is represented in media or in film and TV, it's seen in a little bit more like there's a lot of emphasis on the war and a lot of poverty and just a lot of sadness. And I feel like for me, I've had the privilege to go back to Vietnam and experience it in modern day. And so I really wanted to capture the beautiful essence of Vietnam in this film.
All right. And folks on The Empathizer, how about you guys?
I personally moved back to Vietnam 2017, which is weird to say that I moved back because I'd never been there. I was born in California, but I always saw it as a really cool vacation destination, which turned into a place to live. And in that, I stayed there for 3 years. And in that time, I was always conflicted about this country that I was supposed to be born in versus what it was a conflict that I had internally of the Vietnam that I saw versus the Vietnam that my mother had always told me about. And pretty much.
All right. Did the other two speakers, do you guys want to add anything from either of your films?
I mean, I made the film because Fred approached me and was like, he really wanted to make this film. Fred and I met in Vietnam. I also was living there for 3 years, and so we both had like a, obviously not the same, but like very similar, like or connection to the country, and it's something that I wanted to explore through filmmaking a lot. And helping Fred to like tell this story was incredibly valuable for me, and I hopefully it can be for the Vietnamese community as well.
Yeah, I'm very glad that we had Brett, who is just like a neutral third party, help tell this story. He's white. I don't know if you can tell.
Yeah, is the color working or? Yeah.
Song, do you want to add your experience?
Sure. I didn't create this film per se. Catherine and I graduated from NYU Tisch. And I guess before I met Kat, I only worked with the Korean American filmmakers from our school. That her approaching me about this project was honestly like stepping outside of my comfort zone. But hearing her family story really just pursued me just to give all in and take a flight and go to Hanoi with them and film something amazing. So yeah.
That's awesome. Um, so yeah, so then building on that, I guess this is more directed at the folks who produce the films, but then for other roles, also contribute a sort of your own experiences with this. But then I want to sort of explore each of your relationship with the country of Vietnam, right? Not simply, as this geographical space, but also like from both your films, I saw clear themes of family. I saw clear themes of connection or reconnection with the country, even if it's conflicted. Its people, its culture, that all comes clearly throughout the film. And I was, hoping you guys can talk a little bit about what was that like, that visit, that return, that emigration to Vietnam. What was it like to film in the country? What challenges did you face, and what kind of benefits do you see in developing a film in Vietnam? And we can start with White Butterfly again.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in California, lived here my entire life. But I've been really fortunate that, when growing up, like my parents always brought me back to Vietnam for family vacations and everything every year. And so I always like felt really close to the country in that way. Also, like before I went to preschool, I didn't even know English. Like my parents, even though they speak fluent English, they were like, we're going to speak Vietnamese at home, and then you can go and learn English at school. And so I remember like people would call me Catherine at school, and like I didn't even know that was my name. But because of that discipline, I feel very fortunate because now I'm fluent, right? And I feel way more connected to my culture. And that way I'm also like closer to my family, and just closer to to my Vietnamese heritage and roots. And so big reason why I've always like wanted to make films in Vietnam and tell those stories. It was such a treat to be able to film in Vietnam. It was just really special to me, being able to, work with my fellow peers at NYU with Juyeon. I also had my DP and my creative producer. So the four of us went to Vietnam to film this, and then everyone else was local cast and crew. And I think that blend of cultures worked really well. Like everyone in Vietnam is just so kind and so generous with their time and their efforts. And it was just like a really amazing collaboration. So yeah, I'm doing it again at the end of this year. So that's how much I loved it.
It's awesome. Folks from the Empathizer, how about you guys?
I'm so glad that you brought that up, Catherine, because I was curious about this before. In this way, I asked for a screener of your film that you could learn about your film, because I'm so glad that we were paired up, and turns out we're a very good 1-2 punch, in my opinion. But what stuck out to me was the fact that you were invited back to Vietnam every year, like to go on vacation as a kid.
Yeah.
That's so sick to me because Vietnam was a forbidden country to myself and my sister, even though we were forced to learn Vietnamese language and learn, like, the ways of South Vietnam, um, and sing, the South Vietnamese national anthem and respect this, like, South Vietnamese flag. We weren't allowed to go to this modern Vietnam. Actually, the real crux of the film, that we made. So yeah, for me to like go back to Vietnam and try to like tell this story was difficult, but it was heavy. I felt like there was a little bit of a weight there to, explore this point of view that is kind of unexplored. What was it like to film in the country though? It was dope. It was cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I love filming in Vietnam. I filmed a few films in Vietnam and a bunch of documentaries and stuff. And um, I mean, like, just like personally, I don't know if there's like a more beautiful like land. If we're just like talking geographically, the land of Vietnam is so gorgeous, and like the locations are so beautiful, and like the culture is so beautiful. And but also, yeah, like, I mean, what Catherine said, like working with a local crew, we had like, local sound crew, local camera operators and stuff. And like, those relationships are people that I still, cherish, and people that I, really like to.
Well, I think you should share your experience as working as a director of photography in Vietnam. Like before we even did this film,
Oh
when
yeah.
I met you.
Yeah, so I worked as a director of photography when I was living in Vietnam. I worked for a bunch of like small short films and a few feature length documentaries, but also for like a food and travel YouTube channel. And so I was doing like a lot of the filming, both inside of Vietnam and kind of showcasing the culture there, but also like, going outside of Vietnam. And so filming in places where I don't share the language is something that's like weirdly very familiar to me. But I called Vietnam home for 3 years, so it felt it felt different to that in a big way, to be able to like film this project there. And also like a lot of the locations that we were filming at were, friends places, or we were both really tapping into our personal connections to the country by, when we were there, both in the subjects and in like, the people we were working with. And so it was very much like in my perspective, a very much like a joint production of like,
For sure.
the Vietnamese locals like very much helped us to tell this story as well, as much as like the Viet people we interviewed did too.
And how about you, Young? What was it like for you in Vietnam?
I remember having like a week before us going into an actual filming stage, and every day was a blessing from heaven. The food there really just cured all of my pain and sorrow. And I was never ever so excited for like a midday break or like the lunch time during filming ever in my life, because we were filming in like a temple or like someone's house, was it, that they provided like food. There was a restaurant in our, filming area that whenever like the lunchtime hit, like I took my mic off because I didn't want them to hear me slurp or chew, because I was gonna go all in. And like truly, I just enjoyed it so much because Kat is my best friend now, and it's just like filming something with my bestie, having amazing food. And well, I didn't really like understand what the local people were saying, or I couldn't really communicate with them without Kat. So it was, extra time with her. But I truly had so much fun. I would do it again. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so then sort of building on that, do you guys face any sort of like cultural or linguistic barriers, challenges, and whatnot? And how do you address these challenges, and what kind of opportunities or that do you guys see coming from outside Vietnam coming to the country? How does that shape the way that the films that you produce or the way that you view the country? Or do you see any opportunities in that? Let's start with the empathizer for this question.
Besides what I had been facing for the entire 3 years I was staying there, now it was pretty run-of-the-mill cultural or linguistic challenges. How did we overcome these? I just would turn to Lom and be like, "What do you say?" and Lom's like, "We have to jumpstart his car." I'm like, "I'm not doing that."
He's talking about like our camera operator or Lom,
Yeah, Lom, our amazing camera operator. But no, there were none to report. No problems at all.
Yeah, I feel like most of the challenges that you faced during it were more the challenges of like opening, you cracking yourself open and
Yeah,
like
that's
exposing like generational trauma to an audience.
And
which
that was all in English, so it was fine.
Yeah. But I mean, which you did, I think you did very gracefully in the film, and like
Thanks, man.
it's also it's a challenging thing to do, to like dive into that kind of topic. So but in terms of I honestly like, in terms of like the Vietnamese aspects of it, I think if anything, like it made us both feel like really great to be there making the film, and there weren't very many moments where I felt we were hindered or like dealing with like a unique problem in filmmaking that we wouldn't have in any other place,
And
right?
that is again like what Brett was saying, that he's a seasoned like director of photography who's very comfortable working in areas where there is a language barrier. So yeah, we're just a lucky combo, I guess.
That's
Not lucky,
awesome.
we're good, but
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh yeah, White Butterfly, you guys,
I was just gonna add on, like, I also feel like, a lot of the times people ask, like, oh, is it like really different filming in Vietnam versus, in the US or something? And it's honestly like very similar. I would say like I even enjoy it a little bit more because I think everyone is just so like handy and proficient with their time and everything. I will say, I think the biggest challenge for me as a director was directing in Vietnamese. I'm fluent in the way, conversationally, right? Like just casual conversations, but directing in Vietnamese is a totally different ball game. And so having to navigate that, and also like directing very veteran actors like Go Min Chang and Go Nhu Quinn, like, how do you leverage respect as a director, but also respect these actors who are veterans in their field, respecting their past works and like, honoring them for their age and everything, right? So that was like really interesting for me, and I think it's something I'm still trying to like figure out. But yeah, I think my line producer and my AD were like really amazing, because I think after a while I was like, I don't think it's super like efficient for me to be directing in like 100% Vietnamese, so I just started doing it in English, and then they would help me translate. And that was like really fun. But yeah, I think Judy can really speak to working with these actors in Vietnam.
I mean, like, it was an honor is the least I could say. I learned a lot from them as well. I think there is a big gap between the very conventional K-drama we see and the way actors from K-drama and actors from Vietnam present themselves. The bodily nuance is very, very different and very gracious, is what I really took away from it. And although I learned, we spent 3 months just to like nail the lines. The language barrier was probably like the biggest challenge for me, because I didn't want to just master the pronunciation, but I wanted to get the intonation, the the nuance that my age Vietnamese American might have. Like even when I'm saying, you know, or oh, it's good, yummy. Like I don't want to have a Korean me doing that. And to spend 3 months with Kat and her family to learn that was a great learning lesson for me. And one other challenge I would say was, even this project itself was a big risk for me. I didn't want to portray like a culture that I'm not familiar with, because I didn't want to be disrespectful for the potential audience. Like, I had like, you know, I was weighing the pros and cons of this. The pro is like working with such an amazing filmmaker, but the con is there's a fine line of the like a correct, respectful interpretation and like cultural appropriation. And I did not want to either blur that or contaminate this beautiful realm. But I think being in Vietnam and being around Kat for such a long time was really helpful for me. And we did, you know, extensive research with cultural advisor as her mom. But I think we as a team just changed the challenge into an opportunity rather.
All right, thank you so much. That's great stuff. So I guess the next set of questions will be more specific for individualized the individual films. So then we'll start with the White Butterfly again. But you know, and then we'll follow up with the Empathizer. But you know, so for the White Butterfly, this is something that I was quite interested in. Sort of like the symbolism behind the White Butterfly. Why is it in the title? You see the White Butterfly multiple times throughout the film too, especially at the very end as it flies away, when you have this sort of moment of like closure and also or like acceptance. So the question is like, what is the significance of the White Butterfly, and why do you choose the symbol for your film?
Yeah, so this film, like I mentioned earlier, is about my grandma's passing, and it's also a film that, you know, is a tribute to her. Ever since my grandma passed away, I would always see like white butterflies in our backyard, and my dad would tell me like, oh, like according to like, you know, Vietnamese tradition, we believe that it's kind of our ancestors coming back and visiting us. And I, you know, I don't know if it's true or not, but I love thinking that it is. And I've had, you know, a lot of experiences where, you know, I might feel really sad or really angry about something, and just like I'll go out to the garden. Like I remember this one time I was like crying, and like the butterfly was circling around me, and I thought that was like so special. Just kind of, you know, this like message of my grandma still being there and being here with me is really special. And then, you know, the specific scene of May releasing that butterfly at the end, I think for me, it's really her letting go of any sort of resentment that she had towards her mom's actions, towards her, you know, maternal family, but also kind of letting go of her mom's like soul on earth. So I don't know if Judy has like a different interpretation.
For sure, for sure. I think it's a very like common thing then in Asia to have this like symbol of like lost soul or a gone soul to be in an animal's body. Because in Korea as well, like we do consider like our ancestors coming back visiting us, and that's why we do like an yearly like tradition of honoring their favorite food and their favorite song or alcohol. And although I never had butterfly come into our ceremonies yet, um, I think honestly, like the last moment, the last scene is probably my favorite as well. Well, during filming, we didn't have a butterfly, so I was, you know, very professionally looking you know, from 10 o'clock to like 12 and then 2 p.m. But it was because it was an actual, you know, our last day of filming, our last scene that we filmed, that it was almost saying goodbye to this project, saying goodbye to my time in Hanoi. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful, yeah, goodbye to maybe Kat's mom's memories.
Yeah, thank you so much. So then, sort of building on that issue of spirituality and whatnot, religion features very well in your film. So then, Dao Mao is probably perhaps one of the lesser known religious practices or forms of worship in Vietnam. And I was wondering you can expand on the significance of this religion, whether to Vietnam or for yourself, what the religion means to you, and what was it like to recreate aspects of that religion or learning about Hao Dao.
Yeah, so you're right. I think Dao Mo is something that's not known worldwide, and also not known even within Vietnam. I think it's still something that's a little bit hush hush, and that's because I think for so many years it was deemed like illegal to practice. It was very controversial, I think, because people saw it. There was like such a fine line between Dao Mo and shamanism. But you know, even like for me myself, like while making this movie, I did a lot of extensive research. I had two amazing cultural consultants. One is Viet and the other was Kim Ban Choi, and they are very, very deeply involved with Dao Mo. And so they helped me understand a lot more about this worship, which is really a worship of celebrating the gods and goddesses of Vietnam's, the emperors and empresses. So it's not shamanism. And so that was even something like a journey for me in learning more about this worship. And I think it's such like a beautiful part of our culture that, you know, not a lot of people know about. And so I really felt like it was really important for me to put this into the film and in a respectful way, and just potentially help dissolve any sort of like misconceptions or misunderstandings. And I think, you know, it was really special to be able to include Dao Mo into this film, because actually we didn't recreate anything. So that whole scene at the temple of that ceremony is actually real. And these ceremonies last anywhere from like 3 hours to 6 hours. And I think ours like lasted for like 3 or 4 hours. And we got really special permission from that temple to come in and film their actual ceremony. So those are not actors. It was just, I mean, Juyeon and Go Min Jang were the only actors in there. Everyone else is real. Everything, you know, was set up for the real ceremony. And so it was just really special that we got the blessing to do that.
It was truly spectacular what they did. It was almost like an actual stage, like a very square looking, like literal, you know, like a rose stage that people sit around. And the fact that we didn't recreate anything, like we were sitting in the audience seat as well, and I was in awe of their almost like a dance move. It was so like celebratory. It was so festive, but very strict as well. I was almost scared of how stern they look, but their bodily nuance was just so like happy and gleeful, throwing money in the air. You'll probably see it in the film how happy I am just grabbing all those money, because I was still getting used to, like, you know, the currency exchange. I thought I earned quite a lot that day. But to immerse myself into that specific Vietnamese culture was, you know, I can't really exchange that with anything. Because Kat also told me how it could be a very controversial topic to even include. And I was quite surprised that Kat would even, you know, film about this, because she's a very new filmmaker in this world. But you know, I really applaud her courageous move and to give me a chance to learn about this. it's yeah. I know she has a thought that she might want to extend this as maybe a documentary to spread the awareness and knowledge of Haodong. And I'm patiently waiting for that day.
Me too. I think I'll also add a little bit tidbit. Like, I think from the very beginning, when we knew that we were going to add this into the film, it was so important that we weren't going to recreate that scene, because I think we really want to respect and honor the religion, and so I think recreating it would have been a little bit disrespectful. And so for us, it was actually very nerve-wracking, because even just like 2 or 3 days before filming that, we didn't know when they were going to have the ceremony. So I was like, if we can't film it, then we're not going to film it at all. Yeah, I think it was really such a huge blessing for us.
That's so cool that the whole thing was not recreated. It was just a lie. Oh man, it's so like visually, aesthetically, cinematographically, really. But then shifting gears, I want to ask some questions for the folks over at the Empathizer. Again with the titles, I was wondering if you guys can talk a little bit about the title of your film, The Empathizer. So then when I see The Empathizer, I immediately think of The Sympathizer, the novel written by Viet which, recently been made into an HBO series. For Vietnamese Americans, it's somewhat of an important cultural phenomenon. I was wondering if this had, any reference, the title of your film had a reference to The Sympathizer. And also, why did you choose the term empathy, right? So that's, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, what did you say? The Sympathizer?
The Sympathizer.
Is that like a
I
movie
don't know what that is.
or?
Oh, so then this was just completely just like
How do you spell that?
I'll Google it. I'll Google it right now.
Yeah, but like silly symphonies, like Looney Tunes.
It's just a coincidence.
Oh, I've heard of that. I think
know
I
what
saw
that is.
an ad. No, we're joking.
We're completely fucking with you.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, dude, we know the Sympathizer. We love the Sympathizer. We've spoken with Viet Nguyen on multiple occasions about the film. We just thought it would be a funny title. I do a comedy show called Embarrassed by Night.
Yeah, I mean, it was also like we knew that a lot of the themes of our film were like similar to that project of being like, we're so many years outside and past the trauma and the horrors of the Vietnam War, and can we make an effort to kind of like bridge that gap a little bit and to try to like see both sides of it and like understand where that's coming from?
Yeah.
Would you agree?
For sure. Like the themes of that awesome book are definitely, they're echoing ours. Like I'm not communist, but it's seeing, it's seeing things from the other side, being somebody in the book, he's in there, but as in our film, we are very much removed from the consequences, or not the consequences, but the actions of the war, which led to the consequences. So we're the children of consequences. Is point. I'm so upset that bit didn't land.
I think people at home will laugh at it.
hey, I was surprised. You just gotta look at my reaction. You just gotta laugh.
Yeah,
No,
Bruce
okay.
didn't even spell that right in the, in the chat.
But yeah, so I want to talk
Catherine
to
is
more.
so
Yeah.
annoyed.
No.
I do want to talk a little bit about so for me, the last part of the film is probably the most impactful. It was when like really ticks, like it really got to me. It was very emotional. It's very profound. In your conversation, Fred, in your conversation with your mother at the end, when she articulates her reasons for not returning to Vietnam. So that on the one hand it was emotional, on the other hand for me it was I also saw it as quite healing to see different forms of acceptance. On the one hand, she requests acceptance for her decision, but also an acceptance that you, as her son, had a different viewpoint. Is something that you don't see regularly within this community, right? The Vietnamese American community. But then you were able to capture so well on the screen. I was wondering you could talk a little bit more about how you got to this point in which you made something like that happen. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Thank you. We did get very lucky about how that scene actually went. When we set out to even shoot this film, we thought it was just gonna be like a breezy 22-minute YouTube video about just Viet people moving back to the motherland, and it was maybe I would just be like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Like, "Oh, I just teach Taekwondo classes at Bentown Market or whatever." And it we were very fortunate in that the people that we talked to had a lot to share. And it was shot so well that we eventually were like, damn, this is actually going to be a lot more ambitious than what we set out to shoot. And so I remember that when we were in the Airbnb and we were talking, we were just reflecting on like one day of shooting 2 interviews. And we're like, you have to talk to mom now, because I couldn't shut up about my mother, and that was never in the cards. We did not have that plan at all, but we just knew that that had to be like the bow on top of the film. That we have to talk to mom. We can't just be us rambling or being stoked about this new country without hearing from the other side. And fortunately, mom came to play ball, and we just got a fantastic interview out of her.
Yeah, I think like Fred said, we never had any intention of like doing that when we first started making the film, but like as we were making and doing these interviews and I'm behind camera kind of like watching the direction that Fred is taking the interviews in. It became very clear to me that this was like a lot more personal and like autobiographical film than like we maybe like set out to make. And so yeah, we immediately like we're like, yeah, we got to bring in that generation that we keep talking about and like explore that angle. And yeah, the interview itself, like doing the interview with your mom, was very interesting because I think neither of us really knew what to expect at all. And so we were like, basically like the way we filmed it was, we set up the lighting, we set up all the cameras. I pushed record and like I left. I had it connected to a laptop so that I could see the video from like the room that I was in and monitor the recording. But it was just Fred and his mom in the room, and I just kind of like let them do their thing and didn't interrupt or anything. And she came and was like it was like instant. She had a lot to say, and the conversation, like I think obviously I don't speak Vietnamese well enough to like understand what was happening in that conversation, but I could tell from the other room as Fred's sister like translated live to me that the what we were getting was like a very meaningful and like moving conversation between the two of you. And I think
And hyper literate. She was so good with her words.
Yeah.
And shout out the person that we hired to do the translation to. Just nailed like my mom's old like pre 1975 Vietnamese vernacular in such a way that it's just like, oh man, she is like in love with the country that she left.
Yeah, but I do think like there is an angle of this story that we could have gone down. Like I think maybe like a more like confrontational or like less understanding filmmaker may have gone down where we're like,
Less
no,
empathetic.
yeah, less empathetic, if you will, like where they're like, no, the movie must end with like his mom traveling back to Vietnam and like Fred showing her the country that it's become. And
We're just
I don't think
waiting in line at Viet Jet.
yeah, like I don't think that would have been possible first off. But it's also, I think also is just like, you know, being able to like recognize that her emotions and her feelings like do legitimately come from like trauma and like, you know, the stuff that probably we are not going to be able to really solve. You know what I mean? But we can help to like
We had the conversation.
yeah, we can reach a level of like understanding at least that I don't think we had before the film was, and that's more like for you to say, but
And that's what I
yeah.
loved about the fact that we're paired with White Butterfly, because the White Butterfly is absolutely a film about conversations as well, and set in different settings. And you guys are doing your thing in Hanoi. We're doing our thing in mostly Saigon. So when I was watching your film, I was like, oh, this is
Okay. Thank you so much. That was awesome. And I thank you for sharing, the process, through which you made that happen. So we're almost running up to the time. So then, you know, building off of that, I want to start with the empathizer on this. But then, if you wanted to send a message, to your audience, both of your film addresses, Vietnamese audience, but also a Vietnamese American audience. And I wonder if you could, if you have a message, what would that be through your film?
yeah. The message I hope is to welcome conversations like the toughest one that I've ever had, the longest I've ever talked to my mom about this. And in the middle of it, I experienced a hate crime, which is crazy.
Oh god.
That's a different story. But yeah, it's ultimately like it's leading to just I have easy ass conversations throughout the whole first 45 minutes or 40 minutes. And then, at the end, I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to have the toughest one. And it doesn't really go anywhere, but they don't have to, as long as they happen.
Thank you
Call your
so much.
mom is what is if you want that quick answer.
That's awesome. All right. White Butterfly, how about you guys? You want to send a message through your film? What would it be?
I would say welcoming different experiences and new perspectives and not approaching situations with such hostility and just being so welcoming. I think that's what's really beautiful. Really the message behind the film, right, is just being open. And I think within like our team as well, Juyeon being from Korea, like just welcoming different cultures and the blend of it all.
All right. Thank you so much. Do you guys have any, final things you guys might want to say, um, to the audience, to the watchers, anything?
I just want to say that Juyeon, I was so surprised to find out that you were Korean just now because you nailed that like really crappy Vietnamese accent. So I remember I was turning to Brett. I was like, "Wow, she really sounds like one of us."
He's so good.
Yeah, it was so good.
I want to kind of just say like even though you're the film that if you watch the film, you know, it feels like a very complete thing. There's a lot that we are still working on in terms of licensing and being able to afford you know, festival flights and being able to really like get this film out there. So if you're interested, you can check out empathizerdoc.com.
.com. There's a link to our film independent fiscal sponsorship page which deems every contribution to our film 100% tax deductible. We are still very, very much in debt.
Yeah, we're fundraising to really complete the film, to cover our costs of completing the film, and to really get it to as many people as possible and have this conversation. So if you're able to support, we would, you know, we really need it and we really appreciate it. That's
And I guess
All
watch
right.
the Sympathizer, whatever that is.
Well,
Never. Only Empathizer.
Yeah.
Wow.
But please send the link, Fred and Brett. I would love to check it out as well. I'm you know, a half year I'm a film actor, and half of the year I'm on stage doing theater. And if our viewer or the audience is ever in Minneapolis end of year 2024 December, I'll be doing a show called The Heart Sellers, and it's a two-hander about one Filipino woman, one Korean woman immigrating to America in 1970s, and celebrating Thanksgiving, which is so fun. So please check it out.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And you know, hopefully, you know, this the film festival, you know, we're gonna have a great audience. You know, you're not gonna, we're gonna have folks not only from just across the world, but also like, you know, young people coming in from colleges, from high schools and whatnot around the Orange County area to this event, and it's gonna be great. I'm signing with all students. Right, extra credit, you know, they can show me the tickets. But yeah, so you know, hopefully, good exposure on that. But thank you for everyone for this panel. So in closing, I just want to say that I personally very much like both your films. You know, and the question of intergenerational conflict, dialogues with the older generation, particularly for younger Vietnamese American folk, has always been something that, you know, that I have questions about. I always have to think about, and it's also something that, you know, that my own students who are from, you know, Vietnamese or Vietnamese American background, some of them are international students. How do they talk about painful issues of the past, you know, in such a way that's conducive, in such a way that 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 helps healing and sort of like moving forward. But I think I'll take, you know, Fred's statement on this, that, you know, just having that conversation might be enough, right? And that's a wonderful message. And I just want to acknowledge Bruce Lee as our technical support, and to remind the audience that the Vietnamese Film Fest at Home continues through October 20th. All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.